I want to take a quick second to talk about hair jigs for panfish, specifically crappies. I just did a video recently on my go-to crappie presentations for right away, and the most response I got was regarding hair. And what are some of the variations? I know I kind of used the Kleenex term hair jig, right? There's a ton of them. So I wanted to break down a few of the options of hair jigs, and really the ones I focus on here in the springtime for crappies. Like I said, there's a ton of ways to skin a cat when it comes to this topic. There's all kinds. My kids love to tie their own, which is super fun. So they're tying up their own jigs. We're using a variety of different materials, from chicken hackle to flashabou to marabou to bucktail to rabbit fur, deer fur. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to do this. I got a handful here tied up. I got a few other variations I want to talk through, but for me, really, it comes down to there's main reasons to fish hair. For me, I don't want to put my hand in the minnow bucket. I don't always want to have to mess with the plastic. I might not thread it on straight. It's a very, very efficient way to catch fish. The only way a hair jig stops working, in my opinion, is when a pike bites it off. Now, there are times for sure when they just don't want hair and I have to switch to more of a plastic, change the profile up to get these crappies to bite. But I'd say 90% of the time, I feel like I can get these fish, especially in the spring season, to bite hair jigs. So here's the three variations that I tend to lean towards, kind of four variations, and I'll explain why. For starters, just your traditional hair jig, you're gonna have your favorite jig head. This one happens just to be a 1/32 ounce drop TG jig head. You're gonna have your favorite hair on the backside. This happens to be some bucktail. And then my kids wrap it on there, put some epoxy on there. I don't know how to do it, but they do it very well. Very, very effective way to catch fish. Now, what's gonna happen when this hits the water is that hair is gonna condense. It's gonna get pretty straight, almost like a pin minnow. Depending on some of the materials, they can flare it a little bit, but a lot of these materials are just going to straighten out. They're going to dart, weave, dance, kind of like what I would resemble a pin minnow, like these fish are feeding on. So that material is generally going to just mat up. That'll do the same, or the same thing will happen with marabou. Now, I know that looks really cool right now on camera. It's big, bulbous. There's a lot of profile, but that is also going to, once it hits the water, just go and tighten up and resemble just kind of like a darting minnow or a slow falling minnow. That's one of the advantages of hair, is that that's just going to fall slowly into the strike zone through the water column. I'm not putting a split shot anywhere up here. If I'm fishing a float, I'm generally fishing a float with these right now because this is only like a 1/64 ounce jig. I'm not casting it this far, so I usually have a rocket bobber on there and I'm fishing it like that. So you have bucktail, rabbit fur, you also have marabou. All these give you a little different look in the water, similar concept. And the other one I like to fish is going to be a tighter weave. So you can see this here, another drop TG 1/32 ounce tungsten jig head, so smaller profile, still the weight I want. You can see my kids didn't put as much hair on the back end. This is thinner. This is going to be really sharp. You can trim this down. That's going to be my fourth presentation, is a trimmed down version of this. This is going to be longer. You're looking at about 2.5 inches. Going to dart, dance, weave in the water column. Very, very versatile. You have to, like I said, catch a ton of fish to wear these out. We've caught hundreds of fish, and I mean that, hundreds of fish on these jigs before you're forced to discard them. So that's another good option. And then I was mentioning how you're going to trim that down. You can see what I actually have on here, because lately these fish have been real finicky. So this isn't even smaller. Look at that, just a tiny bit of hair, just enough to almost mask that hook. I'm using a 1/64 ounce VMC. I think it's a moon eye jig, flat on the sides, eyes there. But this resembles just a tiny little 1.5 inch pin minnow. I'm fishing this on a braided main line. This is like an 8-pound Fireline crystal, and I got a 3-pound frost ice fluorocarbon leader on this. And again, I'm using a rocket bobber. I'm fishing a 7-foot light action Thorn Brothers custom. Lonnie and his squad built this for me. I got a 1000 series Shimano and away we go. So that little, look at that little thing, cute little pin minnow looking hair jig, very resilient, gets it done. And last but not least, you can buy so many different variations from the store. This just happens to be one from Mr. Twister. We've all heard of the flu that works exceptionally well. That's going to have some feathers incorporated into it, same concept, also lumped into the hair jig side of things. But you can see here, this one's got a little bit of flashaboo. You probably can't see that on the camera, but it's got a little bit of flashaboo tinsel, call it, inside this hair. And again, this is just going to mat up tight like this. Smaller profile, much like the one I have rigged on. I'm using a 1/64 or 1/32 ounce jig head, and away we go. And these fish are oftentimes keying in on these hair jigs on the fall, so it's falling down. They come up, they grab it. Your rocket bobber just kind of tips up, starts to move, and the fish is swimming away with it. Super fun bait to fish right now. So hair jigs should absolutely be in your arsenal and your bag of tricks for springtime crappies. It's always one of the first things I throw. My kids have had a whole lot of fun tying. You can go to Thorn Brothers and stop into the flying lure there upstairs. Walls and walls of different materials, the glues, the adhesives, the things you need, the thread, the tools. Talk to one of their staff members if you want to get into tying some of your own. It is a whole lot of fun, and there's a lot of pride behind just catching something on something that you made. Again, I didn't make any of these are my kids, but they work very, very well, and they look sharp. You can see they did all kinds of color variations and a whole bunch of different things to get out there and catch some fish. So don't neglect the hair. Get out there, give it a shot. You'll be surprised at how many fish you can catch on one, and also how efficient and how effective they are in catching big slab crappies. Get out there, have some fun. It's open water season. Be safe and set the hook for me.